Hi, Professor D. Thank you for
Hi, Professor.
joining this meeting, and I'm looking forward to our discussion to come.
My pleasure.
The short-term economic development is driven by, we call that total demand in the economy, and therefore you have a sort of cyclical pattern of economic growth. Sometimes it is 4%, sometimes it is 7%. But maybe in the longer term, it is on average 5%. And so if you are talking about whether the economy peaked or not, then I think the focus should be a little bit more on the longer term. So what are the longer term drivers behind economic development? Then you talk about opening up, then you talk about education, technological advancement, innovative behavior, and all these factors. And then I think you may come to another conclusion, that still there is a lot of potential for the Chinese economy to continue economic development, maybe not based on labor force, maybe not based on all kinds of easy drivers, but on elements like, again, innovative behavior, productivity, efficiency. And I think there is still some room for that.
Obviously, I agree with the professor said, as you mentioned, that in the short term, economic performance is driven by demand. Yeah, but long term speaking, it's driven by investment. Yeah. So it's related to competitiveness, and the long-term global competitiveness is related to your investment on which sector and whether it's efficient, whether it's related to the technology improvement. But between them is the debt. You know, the short-term economic growth is driven basically, if we word, is driven by the debt. In the past several decades, the whole world economy is driven by the debt, especially by the U.S. debt. The whole U.S. nation, either the public sector or the private sector or the company sector, or the financial sector, they expanded their debt, and the whole world economy is following, following to pump up. And China benefits from the growth of the U.S. debt. Yeah, because as we see that some of the Japanese-owned or Korean-owned or American-owned business is moving, is diversifying their investment, diversifying the purchasing of the supply chain from mainland China to some other areas like Southeast Asia or South Asia or Mexico and so on. That's something making some difference on Chinese economy in the recent years. But more importantly, if we look at the fact that if we compare the economic size of total economy to the United States and China, okay, we have more than 3 to 4 times of the size of population. Yeah, and we have Chinese citizens working very hard, very diligent, at least as diligent, as hard as Americans. And we have a huge population, well educated. So why the Chinese economy still only 65% of US's GDP? Yeah, that doesn't make sense. You have bigger size of population, and the quality of the population is not poorer than others, than the United States. So why your economy is much smaller? Yeah. So my explanation is also about the debt issue, deglobalization era since 2008, and especially recently, the decoupling or deglobalization process is speeding up. So that hurt Chinese economy to some extent. But the problem is, I do not agree with the so-called China peak perspective. Because at the end of the day, it's not only United States, but also Chinese government could also borrow more and more money to put the money to improve the social welfare. From long-term speaking, I agree with Professor that China still we are going to have another wave of long-term growth ahead. But the difference is before it's driven by the U.S. expansion of debt. And in future, it should be driven by the Chinese growth of the debt.
My impression is that as long as activities in the supply chain that does not create so much value added in the Chinese economy, it does not hurt the economy so much because we want to get away from low value added assembly activities clearly in the supply chain. So if we move on the smiling curve away from assembly, and that these activities are moving away to Vietnam or to other places, I think that is even a positive element of the longer term Chinese economic development.
Since 1992, China introduced a lot of FDI from Southeast Asia, from Japan, Korea, and also from the United States and Europe. It's a process of FDI coming to expansion the global supply chain, especially East Asian supply chain, and China was weaved into the smiling curve, as you mentioned. Yeah, we were at the bottom. We were doing the processing and re-export industry. So the added value is really low, and hence the Chinese people's salary and consumption is really low. That's something interrelated. But nowadays, as I mentioned, the quality of the population has improved dramatically, especially given the fact that every year we have nearly 10,000 students, and 60% from STEM disciplines. We have such a big high level, or at least the middle level labor supply. But the reality is the demand for such a labor market is still structurally mass matched, because we still have so many factories, but we cannot create enough jobs for in the office buildings for these young kids. So hence, it's a natural process that China is graduating. I call it graduating from this processing industry of the supply chain owned by the foreigners, foreign global capital. So today, I'm happy to see that although the growth rate is relatively low, but the growth quality is quite high, because China is doing a lot of progress in industries like car making. Yeah, not only EV cars, electronic vehicles, but also even traditional automobiles. Mobile cars, traditional cars. Chinese technology and quality is substantially improving. So I can see that, and Chinese products are competitive globally. So that makes a huge difference. And we have other new products like chips industry. Although we were sanctioned, nowadays Huawei makes substantial improvement in this sector, and so I'm quite happy with the quality improvement of Chinese economy, and especially its manufacturing industry.
Yeah, I fully agree with your point, and I would say in the West we have the feeling that market forces will create these structural adjustments from low tech to high tech, and that we have to give the freedom to the market, and the market will result in this type of developments. At the same time, I think what we see in emerging markets, and mostly in Asia, is that of course this may take too long And you could even indicate that as a market failure, and therefore you need government interference to make this transition happening from low-skilled value-added or low value-added to much higher value-added sectors like the electric vehicles. So I think it is quite logical from an economic point of view that we see government interference to make this transition happening. On the one hand, we have the Western way of more or less creating economic development, which we may use the phrase of the Washington Consensus, where we implement market forces and where we implement all kinds of liberalization, and where you need to have a certain type of people in your economic system. While now we see clearly that we have differences worldwide, and that we need to implement regional features in economic development systems. You may refer to that as the Beijing Consensus or the Mumbai Consensus, and also we have the South Korean growth model. And I think we need to emphasize that this Washington Consensus is out of context today, also in Europe, because we more and more think that a big market also needs a big government, and that we cannot have only the emphasis on market forces, but that we need to have government intervention. Do you think that this also relates to, in many cases, the middle income trap discussion? Because the idea is that to escape the middle income trap, you have to have a sort of I would say growth factors which may generate increase of efficiency and productivity to make the jump from middle income to rich income. China is on the edge now of the higher middle income country towards the rich, and then it is linked to the way of innovative behavior. How you can make that jump. There, I think also you see this combination of indeed belief in market forces, but at the same time the belief that this government interference is needed, and that efficient government is needed. And if you look at countries like Brazil, you see that maybe the government is too big and therefore not efficient, while in other countries maybe the government is too small, maybe in the US. So finding an optimum government which fits into the stage of your economic development process.
As what we see is many developing countries, or many countries who get partially developed. In the process of industrialization, they produce and export something, but they failed to upgrade its industry to a more sophisticated and more added value ones. As you mentioned just now, Brazil and some of the Southeast Asia countries. In 1980s and the early 1990s, they did quite well, but at the end of the last century, they failed and there was stagnation. They believed too much in the market. They ignored the importance of the government. When you first get industrialized, for the first part of industrialization, the government policy should should be preferential, or take care of the capital owners, especially the real business owners, to help them to be competitive, and inevitably at the cost of its own people's welfare. So we look back on the history over the past 200 years, include Great Britain, including mainland Europe, including Soviet Union or many other nations. A successful industrialization process, the first part is about depriving the ordinary people's social welfare and subsidizing the manufacturing, subsidizing the export. Almost inevitably. But if you do not reverse the first trend, you will be in the so-called middle income trap, because, as I mentioned, if you always take care of the business owners, and then the result is the overwhelming majority of the population is to be affording and to be able to purchase in your own products. So if you want to really get great, a great transformation from the middle income to a high income, then you will have to put a lot of resources, compensate the ordinary people, to make them, to enrich them, or not necessarily get them rich, but make them able to pay for the products, for the high quality products that they themselves made. So it's like a zigzag. First you have to go right. The policies go right, the so-called political right. If it's right, you are take care of the rich people. You take care of the business owners. You are inevitably depriving to some extent your own ordinary people's social welfare. Then the second part, you should be turned left to compensate the losses of the ordinary people, to make them be able to do and at the same time, of course, you have to invest heavily on the research and development to help the ordinary business. In this process, it will be cruel to ordinary business, because that means a lot of business owners will fail.
The right side angle and the left side angle, they both need the government interference. So that is precisely why what you said before, that just having the paradigm of more market and less government, and that more market means automatically less government, that is a paradigm which we should not follow. We should follow the paradigm of market needs government and government needs market, obviously. And this type of pragmatism, how to implement government policy in a very pragmatic way, sometimes to the left, sometimes to the right, I think is also a key element in making this jump to and away from the middle income trap.
Everybody is competing, climbing the ladder, and only very few nations are able to climb to the highest place. That's my framework of understanding. It's not necessarily a natural right. It's not the rights for every nation to get developed. That may be annoying expression. It would be maybe less, not that much correct, but only very few nations at the top are able to produce high quality, high add value products and have the so-called technological monopoly position, very beneficial, and enjoy high life quality. But there's always many nations so-called trapped in the middle because of for various reasons. For example, some of the nations, because the industry will be destroyed by the source, like Russia, like Middle Eastern countries, like even South Africa, or Brazil, and maybe some other countries for different reasons, because they failed to turn left from the tipping point, turn the policy to the left, to help the poor people, to enrich them, to make a society flat and equal and more fair. And maybe some other countries, because their political system are unable to absorb the overseas global shock for various reasons. But at the end of the day, there'll always be many nations trapped in the middle, for various reasons. I don't think that there's final answers. So what is the right thing to do? Yeah, but we definitely could point out a lot of bad things, a lot of wrong things that many countries could make to make themselves stagnate during the development competition. Yes.
Yeah, and maybe we also put sometimes too much emphasis on indicators like GDP for economic development. Then emerging markets with a low GDP per capita may be very happy, or maybe having a relatively high rank in the Human Development Index. So in that sense, maybe the whole GDP discussion also relates to the middle income discussion, or the middle income trap discussion.
I agree with you that GDP is very misleading because it mixes the tradable goods with the non-tradable goods. Now, the tradable outputs and the non-tradable outputs, and I perceive them as something same. But in my framework of understanding the whole world, especially the economy, how the society runs, how they compete with each other, the non-tradable sector should not be perceived as real economic activities. I perceive this non-tradable sector, like, for example, services in the restaurants, services in the hair cutting services, that kind of things. They should not be perceived or counted as wealth creation. They should be perceived as wealth redistribution, because cutting a hair, have your hair cut by someone in the neighborhood, it's non-tradable, yeah? The price depends not on the service quality, but only depends on the average income of this neighborhood. So get your hair cut in your hometown, for example, in Amsterdam or in Hague. It should be 20 or 30 euros. Am I right?
Today even 40 euros, yes.
40 euros. But have my hair cut in like city like Beijing is, let me count, maybe 5 euro. Maybe 5 euro, okay? But if the same barber is the guy who have, the serviceman, and the same customer, the same process of labor, same service. If the place moves to Africa, to South Asia, you see, the price could be 40 times the difference. Why? It's mainly because it's only a process of redistribution amongst neighborhood members instead of real creation wealth. So any nation, my observation is, my conclusion is, any nation, if you want to get your economy developed, you will have to get something tradable, get something tradable, be competitive in at least one tradable sector. Now, for example, manufacturing, of course, we all know, but some other sectors, like financial sectors, finance is also tradable goods. Finance service is also tradable goods. It also could enrich your region or your country. Now, of course, it has shortcomings. And even like gambling in the casino industry. Gambling and the casino industry, although morally is bad, at least the East Asia as a standard, it's a really bad thing. But it's also a tradable sector, and because it will help that region to get money, to make money from other regions. Then you could get rich by these sectors. But in today's GDP calculation, it's really misleading because you put this tradable sector and the non-tradable sector together. That's my framework.
I fully understand your way of thinking, and we as economists, we always make that distinction between let's say, the GDP per capita in nominal terms and the GDP per capita in purchasing power parity, to make sure that the lower price of the haircut in China should be increase the purchasing power of the person, of the people, compared to what you normally would have in nominal terms. So we are making a differentiation between tradables and non-tradables, and we put that in the GDP per capita in nominal terms and purchasing power. But maybe in line with your view, it is not so much income earned or value added, but it is more the reallocation of income.
Exactly. That's my point. Actually, I disagree with the GDP calculation, and I do not agree with the GDP PPP calculation, because according to some research, the PPP also misleading. Purchasing power parity is also misleading, because if you define something, if you use a PPP term, that implies that countries like India, their currency is undervalued. Am I right? Yeah. If you say PPP is, for example, India is, I don't remember right now, for example, $3 trillion economic size GDP. And if it's PPP is like 4.5 trillion, okay, that implies that its currency is undervalued like 33%, for example.
Yeah.
Or 50%, let's say. So that makes people think that potentially that Indian currency are going to be appreciating against the US dollar in the coming years. But in fact, no. I'm very sure that overwhelming majority of the currencies, including Indian rupee, is going to depreciate against the US dollar in the coming decade. Yeah, because I made some statistics about these currencies. So that's why I prefer to use the tradable sector, purely tradable sector, to talk about the different sides of the economy and its quality instead of GDP or PPP. Yeah.
And you are fully right. You can use the over or undervalued currency to forecast the development of the exchange rate. That is indeed also possible, but you may question mark that, because all kind of other factors may influence that, which are not related to the overvalued currency.
Okay, so it's a very happy conversation, and I hope next time offline we can meet and have a cup of coffee or have dinner together and have more discussions.
Would be very nice. Well, thank you very much for your insights, and hope indeed that we can continue in the future on this topic. Very nice. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.